So most companies try out new products with a few beta testers before launch. Facebook does that too, but there, when you test on 0.1% of people, it's 2 million users. So that must make your job pretty nerve-wracking, especially when a product's success or failure has real-world consequences, like Community Help, a product that you helped design. Can we get that image up on the screen? So Community Help helps people, it lets neighbors offer or find things like food, water, electricity, or a place to stay during a natural disaster. So I wanted to hear a little bit about what's it like seeing Community Help used in the wild during Hurricane Harvey?
I think it's a great question, Josh. First, maybe I'll mention that I think I'm one of the few designers who are speaking today. And design is all about how new things come to be. And as you mentioned, one of the products that we've been trying to bring from 0 to 1 within Facebook is Community Help and crisis response more broadly. It's something we've been working for a few years on. It's also something that hits very close to home for me because my brother, Zach, and his significant other, Laura, actually live in Houston, Texas. So they've been dealing face-to-face with Harvey, the flooding, and of course the aftermath and the rebuilding. And it's really interesting to talk to somebody and to hear about their experience and how they were able to use Facebook to come together. So Laura is a teacher at a bilingual Spanish-English school in a neighborhood in Houston that was faced with actually quite a lot of flooding. And on Saturday, the first night with significant flooding, one of her close friends was actually on the rooftop of her house, stuck, and trying to find someone to rescue her. Emergency services were swamped, and people in Houston who have boats were looking for ways to help, and were trying to find people who they could help. And so through products like Community Help, you can do that. And Laura's friend was able to find someone to come and rescue her off of her rooftop in her time of need. I think that for many of us, we focus our attention, and there's the most media attention during the flooding, right when the storm is arriving. But I know for the people of Houston that actually it's a much longer story. And I know that Facebook has been helping people in the community in Houston come together to rebuild in the aftermath. So my brother Zach actually got connected to a group of about 10 other folks who he didn't know through Facebook. They found videos that explained how to do things like remove sheetrock and tear out carpet because people's homes are soaked and waterlogged, and you need to get rid of this stuff because otherwise it's going to form mildew and mold. And so this group was able to band together to figure out how to do these things, what tools they need, and identify people who they could go around to help.
So it's a pretty cool way to get to see the best possible use cases of a Facebook product happening in the wild. But at the same time, we've seen Facebook endure some backlash when products weren't used as intended, from when Messenger's location sharing feature was hijacked to make a map of where people had been, and most recently when open fields for entering your employer or your interests were abused to show discriminatory and anti-Semitic phrases, which then became targetable in the Facebook ads interface. So how do you design not just to encourage the proper use, but to deter misuse and worst-case scenarios with Facebook's products?
When I think about the designers on the team at Facebook, we feel a lot of responsibility for how the product is used and for the impact that it's making in the world. And we've been trying to reframe what one might think of as an edge case to be more of a stress case. These are some of the hard situations that we encounter when many people want to use the product for good, but a few bad actors might spoil things for the rest. One, I think, cool example of a stress case that we've been designing for recently is actually a stress case that involves impersonation. So we spend a lot of time talking to people who use Facebook and understanding their needs so that we can figure out how to help. And we've heard from people, in particular from women in markets like India, that they're having real problems with account impersonation. People downloading their profile pictures, creating accounts with malicious intent, and using them to defame and to harm that individual's reputation. So we took all that feedback and have incorporated that into a new product, Profile Picture Guards, which is designed to help to ease some of these struggles. So if you're a female in India and you're having these concerns that are pretty serious about your safety in some cases, you can lock down your profile pic with Safety Guard. That reduces the ways that it might be distributed, so someone can't send it as a message or download it or things like that. We also create some visual indications on the profile picture that help others to know that this is a profile picture that you've locked down, and help Facebook to recognize when someone might be trying to duplicate that and use and misuse that.
So I've seen Facebook do a really good job once it realizes there's some kind of issue, whether it's hearing it from its community or seeing it out in the wild, and making quick responses. I think we saw with the false news stuff that Facebook really quickly started implementing a whole range of solutions of trying to fix that. But when Facebook does make these mistakes, sometimes it's because it doesn't see them coming at all. And I want to know, do you think that that might be because Facebook has a very idealistic leadership who might be naive about some of the deranged ways people would see its product? Or is it more like a willful ignorance, just understanding that there's going to be collateral damage when you guys scale to such a massive audience?
You know, there are a huge number of things that we're doing at any point in time, and we're really trying to push things forward. I think about when I was coming to Facebook about 6 years ago. I was thinking about joining the company, and I was talking with a friend about it, and my friend, a fellow designer, was like, "Luke, why do you want to go and work at Facebook? What are you going to do all day? Redesign the like button?" And I think that there's a tendency for people to look at Facebook and think that we've got it all figured out, that it's finished, and that maybe there isn't opportunity for new things. And that couldn't be farther from the truth. When I did come to Facebook, one of the things that I noticed in the hallways and that I love is this poster and slogan that says, "The journey is 1% finished." And I think that highlights an important ethos at Facebook, and probably in building product more generally, which is that there is so much work yet to do. And as a designer, you know, I aspire to make sure that our products really work well for people. Mm-hmm. And that is something that is never finished. There's always more work to be done to make things work better and better.
Sure, but just in these cases when Facebook doesn't always see things, do you think that that's more about this sense of willful ignorance, being like, this is just how it's going to be because we're this big? Or is it more that it's, you know, these people just don't see it coming because they're thinking of the best ways that things could be used rather than maybe the worst case scenario?
We spend a lot of time thinking about the stress cases. We spend a lot of time thinking about the best possible use cases that we want to try to afford for people to come together and build community. But I think that we're not always going to get things right the first time, and it's important that we listen to the community and that we learn.
All right, so with new design, there's all these new modalities that are emerging in technology. We're not going to spend all of our time typing on a tiny screen anymore. Things like images, visual communication, and voice are really changing the way that apps are going to have to be designed. And Facebook was recently spotted by the Next Web's Matt Navarra testing some new features like a search via voice and searching with an image. Can I get that image up on screen? And I wanted to hear a little bit about what do you think Facebook was trying to do here? What were you guys exploring with these designs?
I don't have anything specific to add to these two designs, but there's a lot of energy and momentum at the company exploring how communication can be higher and higher fidelity, and how we can achieve that through augmented reality, through virtual reality, through artificial intelligence, etc. I know that these are themes that you're hearing about from other speakers and from startups at the conference as well. I think what's interesting about these areas is that they hold a huge amount of promise, but they're not yet figured out. They're areas that I would say are at 0 today and are trying to find a path to 1. And those are areas that are ripe with potential and with opportunity for design. So these are some of the problems that designers on the team are most excited about solving. And they're problems where we don't know what form they're going to take in the end. We don't know exactly what's going to work well for people. So we need to be willing to experiment, to try a lot of things, to throw some things away as we're on that journey.
Yeah, to explore something like that, you always need to recognize some kind of need at first, though. Just for instance, with the voice search, like, where do you think that could be useful for someone on Facebook?
I mean, voice is very promising. I think there are lots of exciting things happening in the voice space. For example, just thinking about myself and some of the situations that I find myself in, while driving, I love to be able to try to talk to the car when it works to navigate to a particular place. I think that that's one of many potential use cases for voice.
How about voice navigation for Facebook? So I can be like, Messenger, open this conversation, Messenger, send this message. Is that something you guys would be interested in?
I think that there are some people today who do navigate Facebook primarily through voice, through some of our accessibility work.
Well, I'll be excited to see how that works out for the rest of everyone else. Yeah, I mean, what would you ever imagine Facebook having a presence on something like Alexa? Like, how would Facebook on Alexa work?
It's a very interesting question.
You give me that smile like that's an interesting question we're working on.
No comment.
No comment. All right. Well, maybe you have a comment on this. So Facebook has been widely criticized for copying Snapchat stories and its face filters with products like Instagram stories and Facebook stories. So how would you respond to criticism that it's not necessarily fair for Facebook to reuse Snapchat's designs to compete with it?
I think it's an interesting topic. I reflect on my time in design school, and one of the things that I remember is this notion that I would hear from professors that there's not anything new anymore. Most things are variations on an existing theme. And I think that as products, as technologies mature, these kind of archetypes develop that match people's expectation, and the opportunity to innovate begins to narrow. I think that news feeds are an interesting example of this in the digital product world, where I think people come to a news feed with a certain set of expectations, and it's useful and beneficial and valuable to match some of those expectations. That doesn't mean that there isn't room for a difference and for innovation. If you just look at the news feeds of Instagram and Facebook, for example, you'll notice many interesting differences. It just means that the space narrows. I think that that's something that also happens in the world of physical product design. You might think about the chairs that you're sitting in. You probably didn't think at all about them when you sat down because they just match your expectation for what a chair is. But that's a space where there are a lot of micro innovations happening, particularly in the way that different natural and man-made materials might be combined in interesting ways.
So that makes sense down the line. After a while, there's been that maturation process, and there's maybe less room for innovation, and things mesh together. But it's still pretty early days for something like Snapchat Stories. It's only been around for a few years. And so in that case, do you think it's ethical to so closely mimic the designs of a competitor?
We focus on the community of people who we're trying to serve and listening to their needs. And we try to let let them guide us.
Does that mean you're sort of putting the user first and then Facebook's own interests and maybe those competitors or those ethical concerns last?
I think we're putting people first, and I think that we're focusing on the outcome, on helping them to achieve their goals, and then secondarily on the form that that takes.
Does that ever require you to sort of swallow your pride and say, we're not going to do something totally new from scratch here because it'll be better for users if we just copy something from somebody else, even if we endure criticism?
Absolutely. I think that there are many things that have been invented at Facebook, but I don't think we're so prideful to say that everything's going to be invented here.
Yeah, I mean, but and just on that high level, like good artists borrow, great artists steal. Do you agree with that? I mean, you're an artist. How do you feel about that statement?
You know, it's interesting. I actually don't think of myself as an artist. I think that one of the differences between art and design is the focus that designers place on people. And I think that, that's what this really is all about.
All right. So in 2016, the average user was spending a combined 50 minutes per day on Facebook, Messenger, and Instagram. Do you think there's such thing as people spending too much time on Facebook?
Well, when I think about myself and think about my own personal use of technology, I know that it's important for me to have time to unplug. You know, Josh, if you send me an email at 9 p.m., you're not going to get a response because my phone's going to be in do not disturb mode because I need some quiet time at the end of the day. You'll have to wait till the next morning. And I think that that's okay. I think that, that for me, and probably for many others, moderation is something that's very important. When it comes to Facebook, we don't design Facebook for passive consumption. We design Facebook to enable people to come together, to form community, and to achieve their goals. You know, I think of someone who I met just a few days ago for coffee who was telling me her story. And her story was a story where she was struggling with really low energy levels and an inability to focus and concentrate, and she wasn't sure why. She learned that she had a particular genetic mutation and was able to find a group of others with that same condition on Facebook. And some of the people there were able to recommend some simple solutions to her. It turned out that she was deficient in a couple of specific vitamins and that taking some basic supplements were able to get her back on track so that she could focus and move forward. Those are the types of experiences that we're really designing Facebook for.
There's no, I think you exhibit some strong willpower to say, I'm going to put myself in do not disturb mode and not let, friendly messages and push notifications hit me. There's no cues in Facebook's product that's like, you've been in there 3 hours, do you need to turn on do not disturb, or do you need to maybe close the news feed? Is that something you guys would think about building into the product?
We're always interested in feedback. We really value hearing from the community, and we value input from the community in helping us to identify ways that the product can work better. It's that type of input that leads us to do things like, for example, the profile picture guards that I was describing, which are really important for a whole group of people who use Facebook, and are important in terms of keeping them safe on the product.
So just in general, though, do you think it's ethical for app designers to seek to maximize the amount of time that people spend on products? Is that the right metric?
I just think about it a little bit differently from the way that you're asking the question. I think that the focus is much more on helping people come together to do things that are valuable and beneficial.
And just finally, there's a lot of entrepreneurs in the audience who are trying to get new products off the ground. Do you have any quick design advice for them?
The most basic advice that I have for you is don't let design be an afterthought. Fold design in at the beginning of the work that you're doing, and I think that you'll see better results. I think one of the challenges for all of us who are trying to do new things is that conviction is so important. the belief in what we're trying to do. And yet, if you're overly convicted, that can become dogma. And so we need to make sure that we have conviction, but that we're also open to learning, to different ways of thinking, to pivoting, to incorporating feedback.
So I'm hearing you say that it's important to be flexible in your understanding of design, that maybe not anything is truly new anymore, but you need to find the ways that work specifically for your audience, and you like to put the user first, even above your own pride or any concept of ethics or criticism around design. But what I think is most important is that you guys respond to feedback. So I think if people out there think that Facebook is maybe causing internet addiction or isn't always being used unhealthily, we need to hear people actually give that feedback to Facebook so that you guys can use that in the design process that you've spelled out to us. So thank you for at least listening to the users. I really appreciate that. Thank you, Luke.
Thanks, Josh.